welcome to Halo Hub, Episode 8, the show where Master Chief gets his end away. Honestly, at this point, it seems like Master Chief pulled that blue pill out of his back and just swallowed it and is completely incapable of actually controlling himself around enemy spies of all things. At the moment, our plot still hasn't moved on from the end of Episode 1, but Master Chief, at least, is now having a baby. And look, I know you may have wanted Master Chief to go out and fight and shoot aliens in the face, but let's face it, all of that pales in comparison to the sheer entertainment value of a young adult show where everyone's just trying to hump each other constantly for absolutely no reason whatsoever. So join me on a deep dive of Episode 8, and I've reviewed the others, and there's a link to that playlist down in the description below. But we start with Master Chief and he's drawing circles and having flashbacks to when he squirted himself onto a Halo ring. Oh look, he touched my face! It probably would have just been better if he'd touched grass instead. Oh no, he touched my face! Look, I get that this scene is meant to show that there's some deep spiritual bonding connection between the two, but it makes absolutely no sense. They've essentially been in VR together. Look, I'm a big fan of VR. It's very entertaining. There's no experience like it. But I've never been in a VR game before and then just immediately wanted to hump my mate. Come on, Dave, we played hot dogs and hand grenades, you know what to do. But Master Chief can't resist being in her company, and so he wants to take her out. And brings her a coat for some reason, even though it's sunny outside. It's at this point all the audience realise where they bought her an outfit with a window that unzips at the front. But he takes her out into the infinite corridor of people marching, and we've seen this corridor many times, and there's always just groups of people marching. Kind of think they just march up to one end, turn around, and come back to the side, because it's always the same. But he takes her on the same train that he went on when he removed the pill from her back. And she hesitates. And he's like, don't be afraid. It's a flashback to when he was afraid, when he had his emotions. I can't help but think that the writer is afraid of trains. Like, seriously, how many times are we going to treat a train as if it's a big major life ordeal? She's just walked down a corridor full of people, but a train? Oh no! The intro was Master Chief takes alien spy on a train. But the show tells us we're on planet Reach in Reach City, which is handy, because we've just had an intro sequence that lasted about 15 seconds, and they think that the audience is so stupid they've forgotten where they were before the intro sequence. During this, we've got a Halsey voiceover. She's like, I had an instinct about him from the first time I saw him. He was never the fastest or the strongest. I don't know why he's the leader then. No, but he was always special. There was something about him. I had an instinct. It's like, oh. Halsey, the supposed bestest everest woman in STEM, has literally just invoked woman's intuition as part of her scientific repertoire. And creepy male scientist over here, who absolutely isn't wearing a turtleneck to hide all the bite marks from all of his Halsey clones, goes, oh look, his health improving, he's getting better. And Cortana's like, yes, his health is improving. But like, oh, you're so cheerful. I'm like, is she? Because she speaks like that all of the time. And is anyone surprised that she's excited that Master Chief's body is getting better, considering she wants it to be her body? That's the entire point of why she was created in the first place. To wipe his brain and take over his body and use it as a meat suit. It's like, oh, I'm glad my new car is getting cleaned. Yes, Cortana was invented to be pure evil. But Halsey's like, Cortana, do you think that Master Chief trusts the alien spy? I was like, I don't know. Should our top soldier trust the obvious alien spy that was deliberately dropped into our ranks? I just can't imagine what should be the answer to that question. But Cortana's like, he's not speaking to me at the moment. I don't know. It's like, well, you're in his brain? I mean, I'm terrible at picking up signals from people, but I'd like to think that even I could work it out if I was in their pissing brain. It's like, and if I had to guess, I don't think he trusts anyone right now. I mean, I don't know. He took the alien spy out of her cell for a walk in the park. It seems like he trusts her to me. And Halsey starts taking this really religious and spiritual bent to this as well. It's just a piece of technology. That's all it is. But she's like, I think he's just discovering something I've long suspected, that he's tied to something greater than all of us. It's meant to be spiritual to the Covenant, not humans. But Master Chief's out taking Makee for a walk. I didn't intend to make her sound like a dog, but hey ho. And she starts waffling about a book, and I don't care. Oh, the book had grass in it. Oh, good for you. But why is this interesting to the story, please? But then we get flashbacks to the creepy scene that never should have been shown in the first place, but was so creepy we've got to show it twice. But she has flashbacks to the last time she was going to get freaky with somebody, and immediately switches and thinks, yeah, I like Master Chief now. Luckily, he realizes what's going on and thinks, hey, maybe climbing inside the alien spy in full view of every single single person on the planet isn't a good idea, because if I'm going to betray the UNSC, I should at least do it in private. He's also getting spied on by a drone, which is apparently doing speed of 70, and it's barely moving, so I don't know what kind of thing that... Centimeters? I don't know what it's measured in. I have to say, though, I do like this line.
Look at him, frolicking in the park.
In the park? She's like, the 117 I knew would have torn her apart one limb at a time. And I'm like, well, okay, but she's in your custody. You can do that to her whenever you want if that's what you think is the best choice to do. It's like, here's change, Jacob. It's like, yeah, but so have you, because apparently you're not doing that either. Why have we given all interrogation decisions over to the guy who wants to give her an internal exam and then act as if we got no power over what happens at all? And then she gets really panicked. You don't think he knows what we did to him as a kid, do you? It's like, well, he found out that Halsey did it to him, and he didn't seem to do anything to her, so I really don't know why you care at this point. Oh no, he might find out what we did, and then be ever so slightly miffed. But they walk off away from everyone, and he goes, I saw you. She's like, I saw you too! And I'm like, why are you telling each other this? Surely you must have seen that on the Halo ring and known it was each other. Why are we telling each other this as if it's a surprise? And honestly, I don't know. I thought we were going to get the Frozen movie at one point.
How did you do that?
I let go.
Yeah, he's a big fan of Frozen, this writer. And he's like, oh, so that's it. That's the Halo. I'm like, what? You mean you touched the alien device and then you got beamed onto a circular ring and you're like, that must be the Halo because it's circular. Oh. I don't know if they're really describing every single obvious thing for the audience or whether the writers are so thick they're just trying to convince themselves. But whatever the reason is, when your characters say something obvious, as if it's not obvious and they need to confirm it, it makes them look really thick. And Master Chief asks, what is the Halo and why do the Covenant want it? Which are good questions. But at no point does he ask, why is this device beaming my mind onto it? What is that even meant to achieve? But Makee, with crazy eyes of the century, and she's like, oh, everyone who's worthy will go on a journey to the sacred ring. Master Chief's gonna go on a journey to her sacred ring, I tell you. And those who are worthy will become like gods. And those who aren't worthy, they will be cleansed. After what he did to her sacred ring, she'll need to be cleansed as well. It's just so easy, dude. It's too easy. And Master Chief's just like, you believe that, huh? That humans are unworthy. She never actually said that. She said those who are worthy and those who aren't. She didn't even mention any particular group. And she's like, from what I saw, humans don't seem to be worthy of anything. And it's like, well, firstly, you want to jump the bones of one of them right now, and we all know it, so I don't know why you're saying that. Also, you're human yourself, and you think you're going on this journey, so I don't know why we're using the group classification, but she's also judging all of humanity by her stay on a recycling planet and one other person. Oh, well, you see, once I burnt a steak, and so now I just hate cows. It's ridiculous. And Master Chief just starts getting all soppy in his fifis again. Oh, well, when I saw my childhood, I saw the possibility for love and hope and compassion. And I know they're going to say that's why the Keystone was showing them these memories, so that he could actually be the restraining force and prevent the death of everything. But they're getting really close to, love will save the universe! And it's like, come on, dude. If you can't do better than love is the strongest thing on Earth, then I don't know why you're writing a show. And he keeps going down this spiritual route. Oh, there's something special within humans. Something sacred. I think he's just chatting her up because the only thing that's going to be inside her is him. But two gods come over, presumably because everyone's realized that letting an alien spy roam your planet isn't a good idea. I don't know, call me crazy. But somehow, and magically, this dog appears 2 inches away from her and she never saw it coming. I don't know. But it surprises her and she gets out a little knife finger. I'm like 99% sure this scene only exists to remind you that she's got an energy blade in her finger. There's no other point to it. We're gonna zoom into it really close just to make sure that you realize there's an energy blade in her finger. This is my I'm considering murdering you face. After you've cleaned my pipes. Halo Hub, everybody, where we get 3 men, 1 woman. Honestly, as the time it happens, that's actually not that far from the truth. But this is the first time that we find out that the Covenant is actually attacking planets. Honestly, you should have shown us this in the first episode to establish the fact that the Covenant are glassing planets. Up until this moment, it's looked like the Covenant just went on planets after those Keystone devices and didn't really do much damage to anything else. So they've really been seeming like the good guys who were just doing targeted strikes to get something, and if anything, the humans would turn up and then they'd fight. You really need to establish what the Covenant were doing and how mindlessly they were doing it before your 8th episode out of a 9-episode series. But all the soldiers are breaking down and crying and stuff as 11 million people are turned into lava. But they have a discussion and she says, we need to send the fleet over there. And he's like, you know I can't do that. And we get this glorious little bit of overacting.
They're survivors.
They're survivors! Oh! This is the woman who kidnapped kids, and the kids had a survival rate of something like 38%. But now, suddenly, she's concerned about the survivors, everybody. But then he's like, it's gone. Cold protocol applies here. You've never told us what that is. I know from talking to other people, it's where you can't allow them to track your ships back to the planet because they'll just glass that planet as well. But I don't think the show has ever explained that at any point. Now, there was that ship. Maybe it said it briefly on that ship. But I can't remember that explaining it either. And if it did, it was so long ago, I've forgotten, and so I'm sure many other people have as well. So if you haven't played the Halo games and you're watching the TV series, the universal reaction to this will be, what? We simultaneously remind people that the obvious spy has a weapon in her finger, but never once bother to explain what the Cold Protocol is. And Master Chief chirps up, he's just like, well, Makee will help us. And I say, well, we've got all these people already chasing down her lead, and we found absolutely nothing. And he's like, no, she'll definitely help us. Like, I don't know why he's so convinced that she's going to give them the correct information if she gets access to the Keystone, when she's clearly already lied to them about the location of the planet already. Oh, this obvious spy's been lying to us. Maybe if we give her further access, she'll tell us the truth. I know men can get wrapped around a Type B's finger, especially if they'd like to get access to it. I had so many lines running through my head then, I'm not sure I could say any of them. But at this point, the only word for Master Chief is whipped. And she's like, one stroll in the park, has you convinced? And I'm like, no, to be fair, he wants to go for a second walk through a bush as well. And then he's like, she may have been kidnapped by the Covenant and brainwashed for decades, but she is us. She is human. I really don't know what all this collectivist nonsense is. Now, I've been told that the Halo is supposed to wipe out all sentient life, but the show really makes it sound like it only wipes out one group. So if the Covenant get it, it wipes out humans, and if we get it, then it could wipe out the Covenant. Someone can't just overcome decades of indoctrination. It's like, I did. It's like, yeah, you did. But let's think about how you did. You took a pill out of your back and then immediately just overcame it. It wasn't like some big major life struggle. It's not like we had a rocky montage of you reading self-help books or something. It took you 2 seconds and flashing Cortana. It's probably the easiest thing you've ever done in your life. Then another Spartan did it and she got it as well. Quite frankly, the only amazing part about all of it is that for something which is so reliant on a single pill in your back, nobody has put in those little suits that you wear something to track if it's actually still there. And I don't know why these people aren't questioning the fact that it isn't. But what's his great argument to convince them that they should actually let the alien spy have access to their most advanced technology?
People have just been glassed, and now they're hunting us. Let Makee try.
The aliens are after us, so we should probably try. How is that different to any time in the Covenant War previously? They've always been after you. But don't worry, because that really basic appeal actually worked on them, because the script needed it to. This is what happens when characters don't act like characters. It's when characters act like what the script needs them to act like. Now we get a scene of the Type B Spartan lifting various different heavy objects, which get progressively heavier, and I think this is meant to show how strong she is even without her armor. But really, it goes to show how stupid a scene later in this same episode is. Because if they are this strong outside of the armor, imagine how strong they are inside it. You've gone too far. You've shown them to be too strong. And so now, when they do something like, I don't know, punch or kick something, that thing should be destroyed. In one of the most stupid technological scenes in this, she's trying to translate some alien language. But as far as I can tell, she's using an algorithm to do it, and she can't, because it's speaking in an accent. And the accent and the voice are unusual because they don't have the same normal tones or high-end frequencies that the language normally has, and so because of that, the algorithm isn't working. And she explains that to this dude. She literally describes it as the most bizarre thing because it's either a dialect or a speech impediment, neither of which should stop you translating a language. I guarantee you, no one has struggled to translate a language because somebody's got a lisp.
If anyone can figure it out, it's you.
Woman in STEM! If anyone can solve all of the world's scientific problems, it's more women in STEM. Greatest scientist to ever live. Perfect in every field. Can't translate something because somebody rolls their R's. Back to Makee, who's sitting here pondering just how far she should pull down the zip, and Master Chief can't resist constantly coming back to her room. But Master Chief tells the other two guards that they should go, which I'm not even sure he has the actual rank to do. But literally only does it so they can't hear the headboard smashing against the wall. So he walks into a room with a copy of the book that she had when she was a kid, which as far as I'm aware, literally makes her the cheapest Type B on the planet. But he's like, they're gonna let you try and locate the planet. And she's like, oh, so they trust me? Yes, nobody else watching the show can believe it either, to be honest. And he's like, well, they trust me, and I trust you. And I'm like, yeah, the fact that you trust her is why I don't trust you. So I'm not sure your logic works. But then he gives her the book. I'm assuming it's meant to be romantic, but really it's just, here's this second-hand copy of a book I stole out of a library. I hope you're really happy. And then he's like, we've got others. Like, okay, where do you think she's shoving that one that she'll need a second one? And this is the strangest way to thank anyone I've ever seen. Back in my day, we'd just say thank you and give a handshake. That's not how you do a handshake. Seriously, if this is the price of a book, you can keep them. Have you ever read the Night Angel trilogy? Now get over that desk. You may be noticing a bit of a theme to the commentary on this episode. That's because that's all this episode is about.
Oh, look, he gave me a book and I can't resist because we went on a ring together.
And literally zero of this makes sense because all it was a VR program. But because apparently they can both activate this device, suddenly they're bonded together and it's just the two of them and they're special. All this is meant to be to UNSC is a piece of technology. It's a brick. It's a calculator. It's a computer. Doesn't really matter what it does. But that's not what the show is trying to say. That's the only explanation for this kind of development in basically no time whatsoever. They touch it, they've shared some kind of spiritual experience, and now they're closer than they were before. All this does is say that the Covenant is right. It's not just a piece of ancient technology, but there is more to it on a deeper level. And as far as I know, that's not meant to be the plot. But then they start bumping uglies, and it goes on for ages. It's a really long scene, and they really want you to know what they're about to do. I don't want to know what she's doing to him to make him make that face. Possible thumbnail number 1. Oh yeah, and this isn't just a party for 2 because Cortana is watching from a corner. I tell you what, she should just take a photograph, it lasts longer. I guarantee you she's going to record this and put it on the internet. Honestly, it's still going on. I've got this scene going at 2.5 speed and it still feels like it's going on forever. She kind of looks sad as if, oh, I was actually in love with Masterchief. That's weird. Either that or she's just, how dare you soil my future body with that skank.
My body isn't pure anymore.
Cortana sees her body as a temple. She doesn't want any of that. But then we get to the only part of the scene which is even slightly interesting. Because she wakes up first and realizes, oh yeah, that energy blade that I made sure to show the audience earlier, I've still got that. It's almost like there's a reason we lingered on it for 15 seconds. Because I do like that you get this bit where it's kind of a flashback to when he did it to her in a sort of romantic way. And also, it's incredibly creepy when you realize what her finger's doing. I don't mean like that, although, let's face it, it probably did that as well. That could have been incredibly embarrassing, couldn't it, if she was kind of just getting jiggy with it and it popped out accidentally? Because everything else popped out deliberately that night, but, you know, it could have ended badly, because she's doing the whole hand-stroking thing that he did on her, but then she puts her finger on his carotid artery, and at this point, all it takes is one flinch, and he's gone. Apparently didn't, though. I think at this point, Masterchief has only survived due to his increased Spartan stamina, although I'm pretty sure it was his first time, so you'd think that probably wouldn't have helped him, but at this point, she decides she's just going to pull the blade out of her finger, and don't worry, no one's ever going to ask about the big gaping hole in her finger or why she did it. And I don't know why she needs to do it, because even if she's planning to switch over to their side, she can still use that. That is a useful tool to have, no matter which side you're on. If anything, she seemed to be weakening herself for no reason. Oh, and if you're wondering how long that previous scene went on for, it was 2 minutes, which is a lot longer than the 30 seconds I expected him to. So. But she's really desperate to wash away all of the evidence with water, and it's like, I don't know how that's going to work when you've got a big gaping hole in your finger.
Yeah, he won't notice as long as the sink's clean.
But then we get Halsey going, John has a girlfriend. How ordinary. Which I suppose kind of makes sense when her only other frame of reference is the guy behind her, who has about 500 clones of her in his basement. But Cortana saves the day by just going, their connection is deep. And she was watching, so she knows exactly to the millimeter how deep their connection went.
Their serotonin's in biochemical synchrony.
I'm not sure that's how that works. And then she goes, John is no longer alone in the galaxy. Yes, you're all alone in the galaxy, and then somebody rubs you like you're a magic genie lamp, and now you're not alone. That's the beginning and the end of that. There's nothing more, there's nothing deeper to it. It's just, as long as part of you achieves friction, you're bonded for life. I know this is Cortana, she's an AI, maybe it's meant to be missing the point, But let's face it, this is exactly how the scriptwriter sees the world. But then Halsey's like, John was never alone, he had me. Yes, because what every man wants as a partner is a type B who kidnapped them as a child and then wiped out 60% of their friends. And Cortana's like, of course. And I get that she's like, doesn't really believe it and is lying to it. But isn't Cortana Halsey's brain? I don't understand. If Cortana is Halsey's brain, then she should have all of Halsey's memories and should already know that that's how Halsey felt and feel like that herself. Because nothing has happened with Cortana to sufficiently change her attitude at all. We're just supposed to assume that all these characters go through like life-changing moments, even though nothing ever happens in the TV series to do it to them. And to be fair, it's incredibly difficult to get them to go through any life-changing events when they never leave this base for about 3/4 of the series. But this guy comes over to tell Halsey that he needs her off the planet today, and that somehow he's saved her ship. So while she's supposed to be going to the next UNSC research lab to research for them, at the same time, she's got a ship so she could just, in theory, just fly off anywhere. Like, I know they're stitching her up, but they also seem to be just letting her go off where do whatever she wants. Seems quite generous. But either way, he tells her that she's out and she's got to leave. And she's like, but we had an agreement. Think you got outplayed, love. And she's like, you got to play the good guy. He's like, I didn't play anything. It's like, well, I don't know. You did kidnap kids. It's kind of making you not look like the good guy. But don't worry, because he's going to virtue signal that to the end goal anyway. And I'm kind of on Halsey's side here, because he's like, do you think it's been easy to carry around your secrets? She's like, my secrets? Our secrets? We did it. And he's like, yeah, absolutely. You were there. We saw it on video. And he does everything but except blame himself. I'm angry at you, I'm angry at me, I'm angry at the system. It's the system sacrificing lives. And I'm like, no, that's you, dude. That's you. I don't know why this guy can't take responsibility for his own actions. I mean, at least Halsey's like, yeah, I'm evil and I just kind of own it. But this guy's trying to be goody two-shoes, blaming everyone else but himself when he went along with it all the way and commanded it and ordered it. And just look at that expression. And I don't mind the whole, we're going to do horrible things because we're not left with any choice. We're actually getting wiped out by the Covenant and we have to do this. I think you can still make an argument for that to be the only moral choice you could have made. But that's not what they're doing here. These people are doing horrible, evil things and then going, but I'm still good because it's not my fault, it's yours. And he's like, you've lost everything. What else are you willing to sacrifice? And she's like, you've lost your own child, you've lost this, you've lost that. What else are you willing to sacrifice? And she says everything. And I'm like, at least that's a woman of her convictions. I mean, she does do a weird rant later on, but at least this is a character who knows what her character actually is, compared to him, who is just blaming everyone else even though he was involved in it and did the decisions all along. You cannot have this scene between two characters who both did the same things. This needed to be done by a third party who wasn't involved. Like, the other woman in STEM could have done it because she wasn't involved in the decisions. But he's as guilty as her, and he doesn't seem sorry about it. He's just angry at the system because the system made him do it. But flashback to earlier where she stared so deeply into her eyes. And yes, it was just so they could get a retinal scan so they could gain access to her security clearance. This is why I've always preferred passwords over biometrics, because it seems stupid to me that the passwords that you carry around are also just transmitted by you everywhere. A photograph can capture your retinal pattern, and you leave your fingerprints on literally everything you ever touch. All that seems a hell of a lot easier to me than a PIN code. But then, just in case you don't grasp what's going on by the fact that they showed you contact lenses, we have to watch her putting them in. Then he scans her eye. We see it being scanned in a close-up. And then we see that the security access is granted and it's Miranda keys. This show thinks its audience have the IQ of a jellyfish. And they don't have brains. But Makee comes back and Halsey is being projected onto a wall, presumably because she wants to watch round 2. Hey, I mean, Cortana already saw it. At this point, you might as well just sell tickets. And she's like, it's about John. How do you know John? I raised him since he was about 6 years old. Kind of a bit more to that story, though. And for some reason, she's talking like an Aes Sedai. He's very fond of you, and I hear you're very fond of him. Obviously, all of that's from Cortana, but she's trying to make it sound, or make her assume, that John's told her. She could easily just lie to her, but she's trying not to by giving these half-truths. It's very Aes Sedai. But then we get a scene which seems entirely contradictory to everything Halsey's ever done. And it basically just seems like revenge for getting kicked out, although I'm not sure that's how it's meant to. Because she starts saying how the artifact should never be delivered to the UNSC, even though she was more than happy for that to happen when she worked for them. And she says John believes they're safer under human control. And I'm like, yes, because opposed to what? Covenant control? Are we discussing giving the keystones to the Covenant? Because Halsey then replies, you lived among us, would you agree? But she says, you've lost faith in humanity. And I'm like, to be honest, after 8 episodes of this show, I'm losing faith in him myself. Keeps waffling. I love humans, but we're just selfish, vain creatures, and we just create pain and misery everywhere we go. And I'm like, speak for yourself, love. Oh, we're such selfish creatures. But if I can't work for the AONSC, then they shouldn't have the keystones because only I should have access to them. I don't know if this character is meant to be just an incomprehensible, hypocritical cow, but that's what they've created. At this point, I don't care what the creepy scientist does with this infinite array of clones of Halsey, because it seems like she deserves it. I can only assume that when she talks about creatures that create misery and pain wherever they go, she's just talking about her in her last marriage. And she says if the Halo is a weapon, we'll use it to destroy ourselves once and for all. I'm like, and if you give it to the Covenant, they'll use it to destroy you once and for all. The people less likely to destroy the humans are indeed the humans. And she says, John won't let that happen. Turns out, how do you overcome decades of indoctrination? 30 seconds of pounding. But then, as Cortana watches on, Halsey goes, there is no John. John hasn't existed for years. It's only Master Chief. And then they contradict themselves about 15 seconds later, ignoring the fact that there clearly is a John because he's not doing as anyone actually wants him to, so he's not acting like Master Chief. And that's ignoring all of the fans of the actual games, which have said throughout this entire series that this isn't Master Chief. And she starts waffling on going, John has been used just as you have been used. I'm like, yes, but you were the one using him! What even is this speech? Your gifts are too strong for either side to claim. You too must control the Halo ring. With my help, you have to be born yesterday not to realize that she's just saying she should be in control of it. I'm sorry, this is ridiculous. This is, again, one of those deep speeches which is about as shallow as a duck's backside. I can't physically think of any reason why this camera angle exists, which is above her, looking down, except to try and get a glimpse in the window. And then, just because it wasn't obvious enough, she goes, why don't you tell John? You know, the woman who just claimed she raised him since she was 6. You have a connection with him I could never have. Well, at least until season 2 when they need someone else to get jiggy with him, eh? You should be the one to tell him yourself. Of course, this guy comes in and goes, who are you talking to? He looks around the room for literally 4 seconds and then just walks out. He came in because he was so suspicious, did basically nothing and left again. He still has the question, who are you talking to? Unanswered. And then she just comes back in the room and starts talking to her again. They've already got caught. The guy can hear voices. And I'm like, okay, so now he's just going to open the door and try and catch him again? No. He heard voices once, came in to check, went outside. He's still outside. We'll hear the voices again. Just ignoring it this time. Doesn't matter anymore. Memory of a goldfish. And she's just given up trying to convince her at this point. And she's just like, you have to convince John to bring the artifact to me. Yeah, it doesn't sound like she's trying to control them at all, does it? And if she did mention bringing the artifact to Halsey, to John, John's first question should be, how on earth do you know who Halsey is? But then Halsey just goes completely psychotic when she's asked, well, what do we do then? And Halsey's like, we tap in to the intelligence of the Halo and we unlock our true potential as a species. And I'm like, what would that be? Considering how low an opinion you have of the species of which you are a part of. Which seems to be more of a judge on your character than anybody else's. I genuinely have no idea what they're doing with Halsey because it doesn't seem to be based in anything. She's waffled this kind of dialogue a few times, but we've never seen why. We've never seen that it's actually true, and it just comes across as if she's an unhinged psychopath who has lost her mind. And she's like, you want to become like gods? And obviously it reminds her of the Covenant, which makes sense. Because she's talking exactly like the Covenant. She's like, how do I make you go away? How do I make you go away? Well, simultaneously somehow knowing how to work it perfectly and make her go away. And then we cut back to Halsey, and I don't know why. As of the human brain's myriad of problems, the hardest to overcome is attachment. Attachment wasn't the problem there, dear. Common sense was. And she's like, people are sentimental. It makes the human body reject all reason. And I don't know who wrote this stuff, but I don't think you understand how logic works or emotion works. And even if you removed emotion, you wouldn't end up like this. No, it is not a logical conclusion when you have no emotion that you suddenly want to wipe out everything. In fact, later in the show, they seem to prove that if you remove people's emotions, they stop being logical. And the only logical person in the scene is the one who has apparently had their emotions turned back on. I don't know. I don't think they're clever enough to write the story they want to write. I know where they're trying to go, they're just not going there. And Cortana's like, oh, love. It's like, oh, do they love each other, considering they've known each other for about 20 seconds? But then, in her final act on the planet, she says, signal the Spartans. And things are about to get a little bit spicy. You see, they get a weird whining sound in their ear, which was normally just Halsey's voice, but it seems to be an emergency signal that nobody else can hear. And that signal is suit up. And she's still got the gun oil gunk in her hair. I'm pretty sure at this point it's been months, and her hair still hasn't fallen out from it. And they still haven't just allowed her to have, like, actual hair dye. Like, make your mind up one way or the other, seriously. But Halsey spins a story that the artifact on Madrigal has essentially turned Master Chief and everyone else on the base, and so now she can just seize power and they must just obey her. That they have to ignore everyone except Halsey. And because she's the senior civilian ranking operative, she invokes Z protocol, which means she's now in charge. I don't know why there's an official protocol for the civilian person to overrule everybody else. I don't know why they were trained like that, and I don't know why the military lets them be trained like that. And if she could train them that in secret, I don't know how the military let that happen either. They're going for this weird thing of, well, the Spartans don't question orders because they don't have emotions, which means they operate purely on logic. But not a single one of them is using their logic to go, well, if the artifact has got the military leaders, how do we know it's not got Halsey? They're just following orders. But the orders that they're following just seem to be the first ones that they're given. That's not logical. Just because you removed emotions from someone doesn't mean that they wouldn't question illogical orders, because they would be creatures of logic, so logic would matter more to them, and they would want a reason. They have no reason to trust Halsey over the other people, even under her own story. And in fact, under her own story, if one of the military leaders has also given them that story, then they could have sent him after Halsey, and they would have just obeyed that and took out Halsey instead. It's bizarre. But of course, only the emotional, dyed-in-the-hair Spartan even asks about Master Chief. The other two don't care, even though for the rest of the series, they clearly have actually respected Master Chief, so would have done. But Halsey says that the artifact has just turned him, he can't be trusted, and so they must save him. And she says, John won't go without a fight, and essentially, that's what Cortana's for. She'll knock him out, you'll carry him away, it's all easy. Everything is always so easy. And Cortana has to weigh up a couple of suggestions here, because on the one hand, she can finally get her evil way to completely wipe his brain and take over his body, as her core programming says. On the other hand, John did allow her to get her end away, so, you know, swings and roundabouts. If she takes over his brain, she may never end up inside Makee again. But at this point, Halsey gets a warning. And finally, we work out that the really emotional Spartan with gun oil gunk in her hair has actually removed the pill from her back. I mean, at least the suits have some kind of detection for it, I guess. I mean, let's just ignore all the other times that she was in that same Spartan armor and Halsey was there, and yet this warning never came up on the screen before, but this time it did because the plot demanded it. I could have even understood it if you're like, well, how on earth were we supposed to know until she got in the Spartan armor, which has a detection device in it. But she's been in the suit while she didn't have a pill, and Halsey notices everything except somebody dyeing their hair. But it turns out this is the only thing Halsey needs to actually shut her down as well, because now she can't be trusted. And this proves the only thing keeping these people in line, keeping them under her control, is that stupid thing in their back, which is removed in 2 seconds and nobody knows. Decades of work went into these people, and it's removed in about 5 seconds. She really is the worst scientist ever. But don't worry, because what does the emotional Spartan do immediately? That's right, she takes her helmet off. And as if on cue, it's almost like we've got a lesson from the show itself about why Spartans shouldn't be taking their helmet off. Because Halsey just tell the other two to take her down, and they probably would have struggled a lot more if she had her helmet on. Because as it is, she's just walking along going, oh, John, 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 John. And they turn around, smack her in the face, and she gets knocked out immediately. You know what could have protected that? A helmet like they've got on. The show showcases perfectly what everyone's been criticizing about the show itself, which means they must know, otherwise there was no reason for her to take her helmet off so she could get knocked out. And yet they're still not going to learn the lesson, are they? They're still not. I don't know who cast this guy as the creepy scientist, but this might be the most perfect casting of any role I've ever seen. Even just in profile, you're like, that's a creepy dude. That guy's got body parts in his freezer. But Cortana, finally maybe having a moral spine in her body for once, asks Halsey what she's planning on doing with Master Chief. And she says, well, once we've got the artifacts in Makee, we won't even need Master Chief anymore, so you'll be free to completely take over his body. You know, like you were designed for, like you were coded for, like you were so desperate to do in that first episode we saw you. when you've proven yourself to be completely and utterly evil. And she's like, oh, I see. And you're supposed to think, oh yeah, she's changing her mind. But this doesn't make any sense, because she wanted to wipe his brain immediately, and that same episode was going around trying to guilt trip him because she was calling herself a partner. And she hadn't changed her mind then, and nothing has happened between then and now to make her change her mind. So as far as we know, she should still be the same, but apparently at some point she's changed, and we just don't have any reason why. This TV series has people at one end, and then it has somewhere else where they change their mind, and that's supposed to be a character arc. Except there's nothing along the way to make them have that arc. They just change into different people. And even Halsey's like, but that's what you wanted. Where's that patented enthusiasm? It's like, yes, it should be there. Why isn't it? I've watched 8 episodes and I have no idea what could possibly have made her change her mind. And she's like, I'm sorry, but as you said, sentimentality is not a weakness I possess. When actually, obviously, she is supposed to be sentimental, and that's what made her change her mind. Because apparently she has human emotions when she's not meant to, presumably because she's in his brain, I'm guessing. Which means we're not going to get any character arc or actions which make them change their mind. We're just supposed to show that Cortana has been obsessed with her fifis, and her fifis has changed her mind. Just in the background somewhere without anything being the cause of it. Because that's how emotions work, and people work, and opinions. Normal shows have cause and effect. This just has effect, 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 effect. What's the cause? I don't know. Probably those stupid emotions. This isn't deep. This is as shallow as a duck's backside, but they think they're ever so spiritual and smart. You've never seen such an artistic piece as this. We're really analysing the human psyche. But when I say they cast creepy scientists well, oh, look at this.
You will be the best of all of us.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. I ate her liver with some fava beans and a nice Chianti. Whose liver? It was Halsey number 79214. I just made her consume the eyeballs of 217. The clones basically do the housework for me, you see. Why have a dog and bark yourself? I'm more interested in the hidden story of the creepy scientist rather than the actual show itself. But Masterchief arrives to take Makee to the Keystone, and she looks petrified. I'm still not sure why. Like a lunatic appeared on your TV projector and you ignored it. Okay. I'd just tell him, you know, this weird woman turned up. She said she kidnapped you when you were 6 and she wanted to take over the world. We should probably best ignore that. That's all it takes! But the Type B in STEM finally manages to translate the message. And you want to know the real weird part about this? The translation doesn't actually seem to be a translation at all. It is literally just working out the voice of the person who said it. It's less translating it and more just making it audible rather than having all of this background radiation noise or something on it. So it wasn't a dialect problem or a lisp or anything else. It was just like a staticky phone call, which isn't what they talked about at all before. But the Spartans are getting ready to capture Masterchief, and there's only 2 of them. Halsey says to kill the comms, but keep her access to the Spartans open. No one on the base realizes they don't have any comms. There's not like an alarm system that sets off when comms get cut down or anything. No. They've handcuffed Gun Oil Gunk Woman to a bench in her Spartan armor. It's literally just a concrete bench in her Spartan armor. Also in these shots, you may want to swap out the incredibly massive platform boots, which you only used to try and make the tiny women look even remotely reasonable to have as soldiers. But when you show us those boots, really takes away that movie magic. But she goes to look at the Keystone and she's like, this is the hope for humanity, or the end of everything. And I'm like, as far as you know, it's a calculator. Like, you only know it's a technological device and it may be linked to a weapon. That's it. But all you've ever seen it do is just give people memories. Everyone seems to be really bigging up this device when it doesn't deserve it because you've not seen it and have no reason to think it's anything more, apart from the fact that some nutter in a cell told you it was. You've had so many episodes to actually advance the plot, but because we're still at the end of episode 1 as far as the plot is concerned, nobody knows anything but you're all acting as if you do. I agree you should know more about this stuff, but that would have required you to actually make 8 episodes of television. But she asked Masterchief, what will we do when we find their halo? We're gonna destroy the Covenant and end the war. Then what? Like, what do you want him to say? You're just gonna bang for the next 27 years constantly without stopping? I like, seriously, what answer do you want here? And she says, yes, but after you've destroyed the Covenant, which you would think she would have some attachment to, considering she was raised by them for decades, but either way, what will happen to the Halo? And Masterchief goes, I don't know. We're back to I don't know, everybody! How can you tell when a scriptwriter hasn't thought that far ahead in the plot yet? Well, firstly, they're writing for Halo, and secondly, I don't know! Possible thumbnail number 2. But this is the first time none of them realize they've got comms. they actually have to try and talk to each other before they realize that their comms are down. And like, there's only base comms. No one's got a mobile phone, a walkie-talkie, any other secondary device that doesn't go through the main computer system. No. But Cortana's being asked to take down Master Chief, and she starts talking to him. She's like, "Hello, John." He's like, "Go away. I need to talk to you. It's important. I told you to shut up." And I'm like, it's not as if he can stop listening to you. You're in his face. Rather than going, "Hello, John," why don't you just tell him there's people on the other side of that door and they want to take you down? I think he'd probably pay attention. And she's screaming, "Chief, listen to me." He has no choice. Tell him the information, you lunatic. She's so busy going, "I need you to listen to me." Well, he's clearly listening to her. She actually doesn't tell him the information. And he only listens when she screams, "Stop." When all this time, she could have gone, "I need you to stop. People want to kill you through that door." But finally, she tells him that Halsey's initiated the Z protocol and she wants to take him down. At this point, you know what he's probably thinking? I wish I had my armor on and my helmet. It's almost as if there's a reason why Spartans stay in their armor. It's almost because you don't know when you're going to need it, and you could need it at any time, even in the safety of your own base. So you should always be in it, because you may always be needed. And then Cortana cuts all the feeds, because apparently now, at this point, is the first time she's decided, I actually don't want his body. And the only thing that's changed from her wanting to completely take over his body to now is that now it has been soiled by Makee. Yes, Cortana's basically a demon at this point. She's just not interested in you if you've lain with another. Cortana's like, you've got to be pure or nothing. And then the first time I've not liked the creepy little scientist, he's gone, "I knew she'd do something like this. I told you she'd do something like this." I'm like, no, you didn't. At no point did that happen. I can't remember that happening at all. Since when would he be like, "I knew that Halsey's brain would rebel against Halsey"? It's like, no, he loves Halsey. All of his Halseys. I mean, he's got to. They're all over his house. So Master Chief sends off Makee, and she's like, "I want to stay." Why? You can't even fight. The only time we've seen her fight anything, she had worms do it for her. And then Master Chief turns back as if he's going to fight people, even though he's not in his armor and he's wearing his pajamas. Gun-Oil Gunk Woman realizes what she's handcuffed to, and Master Chief decides his best option is to walk out into the open and go, "All right, let's talk, everybody." Because, yeah, you really have the advantage in your pajamas. And so out come the Spartans, in their Spartan armor, with their helmet. And look, correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, but this should be the easiest fight in the world for them, shouldn't it? When he's not in armor and there's two of them, and they are. We saw the strength of the Gun-Oil Spartan outside of the suit, so now they're in the suit, which amplifies their strength. They should have way more strength, and so vastly outpower him. And yet he seems to be able to resist a gun that's being pushed on him with them in Spartan armor. This shouldn't be a fair fight, should it? And then we get this. This Spartan comes sprinting at him, does a sprinting jump towards him, and punches him in the chest. And he goes flying backwards and smashes into a pillar. He's dead, right? He's got to be dead. You got punched by someone with super strength in Spartan armor in your chest. Shouldn't that go through his chest? Is this just me? For some reason, she comes back to watch, which I thought was Cortana's job, and he just stands up. Oh, it's fine. So the other guy punches him and goes through the solid concrete block, which presumably should have done that to Master Chief as well. I could understand the Spartan armor resisting that, but not his rib cage. So then Gun-Oil Gunk Woman just decides that, oh yeah, this is easy, it's only concrete, and starts kicking it, and it took about 4 hits and she's free. Why didn't the other Spartans realize that you could do that? And if they did, why didn't they handcuff her to something different that was stronger than just basic concrete? Do you want to know the only good thing about this scene? She picks up a helmet on the way out, which is more than Master Chief has ever done. Now, as she's running along, she's giving people commands to not let Halsey's ship take off, shoot it down if you have to. And I can understand that she's higher up than them, so she can give orders. She does have handcuffs on, though, and not a single person is asking her why she's got handcuffs on, or questioning if they should obey someone who's running around a base with handcuffs on. Oh, perfectly normal. We see that every day. It's fine. And they're not discreet either. They're like clearly locked handcuffs that cover their entire body as she runs. So they take Makee to the device and they're just like, stay here and not another word, which, let's face it, we've all heard her speak. I kind of agree with that. And I have a feeling that at this point, she realizes she may have made a mistake bringing her here. But Cortana's helping him. She's saying things like, oh, his knee is out of spec. Take out his left knee. So he kicks him in the left knee and his armor breaks from a kick by a man. Spartan armor's meant to be the most advanced armor in the world, but it gets taken out if you just touch the knee. Now, at least he's fighting with these weights and stuff, which I can understand you'd need to, but that makes sense because he's attacking. The problem I've got is his defense, because he gets punched in the face by a guy with Spartan armor again. He doesn't even have his pajamas covering his face for protection. He gets punched in the jaw by a guy that can break a concrete block. It's like, oh, my nose is a little bit sore. Apart from that, I'm fine. Look, I've long said that the Master Chief in this was thick, but I didn't know that his skull was actually denser than a concrete block. But Cortana accesses the Warthog and just drives the guy into the wall with it. It's kind of cool. It's probably the first bit that's made sense, to be honest. Because then he picks up a weight and she does another jump punch into him and she's punching the weight and he's just like, oh, blocking it. Easy. That's not how force works. She should be way stronger than him, and every time she punches that weight, it should just smash straight into him. Because he's not in Spartan armor, and she is, and I'm sorry I have to keep beating the drum, but somebody's got to, because nobody in the show seems to understand this. But he dodges around for a little bit, then gets a cable and locks it onto her back, and grabs a pistol and starts shooting the other dude, who obviously tanks all of it. Why? Because he had the sense to be in his armor. And it's not as if the showrunners don't understand that they have super strength compared to him, because he actually punches him, and he just grabs his fist and starts crushing it. Now he breaks out of it, but then he punches the armor and basically breaks his fist. So the writers know how strong the armor is, know that he can't beat them with his fists, know that at any point they will destroy him in strength, but only at this point does it matter because he's only just realized all of that, and so the entire fight before this just broke the rules of physics. But don't worry, because he punches him in the face again, or just staggers him a little bit, so that was quite a good punch, that was. We literally just saw him crush his hand with one hand, but a punch, that stings a little bit. And he just keeps beating him in the face over and over again in Spartan armor. And he's like, oh, that stings a little bit. I don't care what surgeries he's been through or how thick his bones are or anything like that. His skin would at least be the same strength and should at least be completely and utterly destroyed at this point. You're not telling me they've given him super powerful thick skin or something and then literally just start pounding him over and over, both of them in Spartan armor. And then they stand him up and hold him and the guy kicks him in the chest in Spartan armor and he flies backwards into a metal wall and crushes the wall and he's on the floor. And the only thing that I'm thinking in this is how on earth is there not a massive hole in your chest where his foot went through you? I'm not even sure you get kicked back in this. I think his foot would have just gone straight through his ribcage. But don't worry, because Master Chief is barely bruised. But the army send a load of people to stop Halsey's ship taking off. And the creepy scientist's like, come on, we've got to go, your Spartans aren't coming. And she's like, no, they will. Like, it's all fallen apart. Every character's just not acting like themselves at this point. It's all gone. Anything from the previous series, the very, very thin characterizations we had previously are just out the window at this point. Meanwhile, the Spartans are still beating the crap out of him, and he has a slight amount of damage to his lip. They're just throwing him across the room at this point. Finally, they have him at gunpoint. I'm just wondering how on earth he doesn't have multiple holes inside him. And I know the episode was about him filling up other people's holes, but that doesn't mean he can't have more put in himself. But don't worry, because the strong Type B has come to save the day. She jumps in, beats the crap out of the first one, shoots the second one. She does this quite cool move where she like knocks her sideways and punches her. I always like that one. And I think there's two lessons here. A strong Type B and her emotions will always save the day. And two, you should wear your pigging Spartan armor. But she has Master Chief at gunpoint, and the other dude has her at gunpoint, and he starts screaming at her that she should shoot Master Chief, and she doesn't. And he just keeps shouting at her to take it, and she doesn't, which means she's questioning an orders, even though she's still got the emotional inhibitor in her back. Unless she took it out in the shower and flashed someone as well, I don't know. And at this point, Makee's telling him, he's speaking to voices in his head, like, it's Cortana. John sent me to find you, he needs your help. And they just don't care. And that is where we find out that she slaughtered the entire crew, and suddenly, they don't trust her. And rightly so. Because she slaughtered an entire crew. What happens next is completely reasonable behavior on their part because of this fact, and yet the show is going to try and make you think that they're the ones in the wrong. Oh, poor Makee. Our little victim. Because Makee just goes, I had no choice. And she's like, so it's true, you admit it then? It's like, yes, because she did it. And she had a choice. She's like, I'm sorry. Sorry isn't good enough, dear. You don't get to not take responsibility for your own actions. So because she's going a bit mental and she's resisting and thrashing around and stuff, while screaming she's innocent, even though she just admitted she was guilty. She gets thrown to the ground, and this guy uses the electric cattle prod on her, just like happened to her when she was a kid. And so we've got the flashbacks to when she was a kid, and you're supposed to feel sorry for her, I think. Oh, she's just been a victim of everyone again. No, she's the perpetrator. She's the evil one. She's the one who killed their crew and then resisted, and it's all her fault. We call this getting what you deserve. And it's still screaming, take the shot. And Master Chief's like, it's me? It's like, yeah, she can see that. Because you don't have your helmet on. Meanwhile, Makee's getting told that she'll pay for this, as is proper, and would be justice for the murder of an innocent group of people on a ship. And then she goes, no, it is you who will pay. And I'm like, pay for what? She hasn't done anything to you. You're the one that's attacked them. But she reaches for the magic triangle, and the magic triangle does magic stuff. And it sends out this massive pulse, which just knocks everybody over. And because this guy is holding it, it seems to like burn him from the inside out or something. It's really weird. There's like smoke coming off him. You can see his mouth and everything. And she's like, ah, the same kind of place as always. Because you know full well what's going on with this face. Meanwhile, this guy's face, not quite so pleasurable. There you go. That's the face that we get every episode. I can only assume this memory is of her time with John. And yes, possible thumbnail number 3. But we're back to doing magic stuff. It can just do whatever it wants. This time it needed to send out a big massive pulse on the humans, so it did. I mean, before it sent out an EMP that only affected machines, but now we're affecting people. Why? Because we needed to. And Master Chief just immediately gets knocked onto the Halo ring. For some reason, he's still got his face as damaged as it was, even though he's in VR. They probably should have watched The Matrix first. But she's there, like, standing over his body, and you literally have this light shining down on her, like she's some kind of virtuous person. Oh, I'm sorry for what needs to come. Pretty sure they're going for this kind of angelic glow behind her, even though she is the evil person. And if you think I'm writing too much into this with the angelic glow, how about that? Do you really think they pan the camera perfectly to this CGI fake sun over her head like it's a halo purely accidentally? Or is this the show going, she's the one in the right, she's the moral one, she's been the victim, and everyone else is bad, and yet the person who wipes out innocent people for no reason is obviously the good and moral one. Like most modern shows, the morality of this show has no idea where it's going and just seems to portray evil as if it's some kind of moral good. But at least after that, he has the decency to pass out after he's had 2 people in Spartan armor repeatedly bash him in the face. But besides the morality, my biggest problem with this show was it hasn't moved the plot on. Again, we're still at the same place plot-wise we were at the end of episode 1. The UNSC has still got the same keystone they had then. We don't know where the Halo ring is, we don't know what it does, we don't know what the device does, the characters haven't really moved on in any kind of arc, they've just randomly changed their personalities for some reason, and apart from learning the names of a couple of things, that's all we've added in 7 extra episodes. The reason this show feels so slow is not just because so many episodes are just done in the headquarters, like this one was, but because nothing happens in them. We don't go anywhere. Now, this isn't a problem when we used to do episodic shows before, where it'd be a self-contained story, and so at the end of every episode, you kind of ended up where you began. But in that episode, there was an individual story. But this is meant to be one long story, and there's nothing in any of the episodes, and the story doesn't move on. If you're going to have one story across an entire series, it should advance. And we haven't! And in this, even the parts I should like, because I am a complete sucker for action scenes in anything, and I thought that the bits in that fight that I should like, I just couldn't like them, because I'm so busy thinking this is stupid. He's getting beaten up by 2 people in Spartan armor, they're punching him in the face, they're breaking concrete blocks, but the moment they hit him, nothing happens, and it just took me out of the fight completely, and all I can think is, this is ridiculous. And all of this could have been avoided if they just obeyed the basic Halo rules. He stays in his armor. Why? Because he has to. Because he doesn't know when he needs it, which is exactly the point that this episode has proven. If after this, he's not in his Spartan armor for the rest of time, 24 hours a day, then he's learned nothing, and he's even more stupid than I first thought. Because anyone can turn against him, because he doesn't know who's his friend and foe, especially when he goes out for walks with an alien spy. And that's not even getting into the Halsey speech, which was, quite frankly, bizarre. I think I said everything I needed to about that during the actual speech. But what I'm interested in is your thoughts. After watching this or watching the show, what on earth did you think of the conclusions that they came to in this? And where do you think they're going in the next episode, which should be the finale? Do you think we can save this in the finale? Can we get an actually good episode out of 1 in the 9 chances that we've had? Or is it just going to continue the sheer failure that we've had so far? Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Like the video if you like the video, subscribe, more videos like this in the future, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.